The 50th Grey Cup, also known as the Fog Bowl, played between the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Hamilton Tiger Cats on December 1st of 62 at Toronto's Exhibition Stadium. Hi, I'm Chris May, writer, producer, and host of This Day in Weather History, now in its second year from the Weather Network in Canada. And this month we're sponsored by Tourism Ireland. Here to tell you Ireland is open and ready to welcome you. Press the green button now to experience epic open landscapes. And I'll be joined by meteorologist and CFL superfan Chris Murphy for this one, This Day in Weather History. It was to be celebrated as the 50th Grey Cup Championship. It was played in 1962 in Toronto at an outdoor stadium that laid right along the shores of Lake Ontario on December 1st. Are you hearing this? It remains the only Grey Cup game ever suspended during play, starting on Saturday the 1st and wrapping up on Sunday the 2nd. And although the 1962 Grey Cup game itself is considered to be one of the 10 best Grey Cup games of all time, that was lost on the many who attended or watched on television because after halftime, really no one could see anything.
It was the greatest game no one saw. I mean, the fog was so thick you couldn't see the other side of the field. It was impossible to keep track of the ball.
Thanks a lot for that, Murph. Just prior to halftime, fog rolled into Exhibition Stadium in Toronto, much to the chagrin of the 32,655 in attendance and the millions watching on television across North America. More on that part a little bit later. So what happened? The basic combination of high pressure holding sway over the Great Lakes region mixing with the cold, moist air off Lake Ontario created the perfect setup for the development of advection fog that was pushed out from the waters that were literally just over the south side stands of the stadium. That's the way the stadium was built. This atmospheric pea soup began engulfing the Exhibition Stadium and, along with it, the 50th Grey Cup in a thick fog that decreased visibility to as low as 0 that afternoon. And the fog became worse as the afternoon wore on. Thank you for listening to this podcast, This Day in Weather History. A reminder that we are sponsored by Tourism Ireland. I was just there and had the opportunity to step back 5,200 years into the past to see landscapes and to see wondrous constructions that predate the pyramids. You can too. Ireland is ready when you are. Plan your trip today. Press the green button now.
Now, what made this game further unusual was that they called the game with about 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter because it was just so bad. So the Winnipeg Blue Bomber players, of course, they rented a hotel, so they just went back to the hotel. But the Ticat players, well, they boarded a bus back to Hamilton. Well, they couldn't get out of Toronto because the fog was so thick, so they stopped off at a motel, which could only take half their players, and then they had to find another motel for the other half of the players. So they wake up the next day, and, their equipment is soaking wet. Everybody's like aches and pains, you got to believe it. And they went back, and they played the last 10 minutes, and there was no score. So Winnipeg was winning 28-27.
I wonder if the fans even noticed. There is no way Ticat fans had any clue, as they probably just kept right on going with their bellowing of Oskee Wee Wee cheers, while the Winnipeg fans continued to try and drown them out with their cowbells.
Funny enough, I remember during the 2012 Grey Cup, so 50 years later, CFL legend Don Sutherland is talking about how just before the refs called the play in the fourth quarter, he'd kicked a 32-yard field goal that he was swearing up and down went right clean through the uprights. The only problem was nobody could see the ball actually go through the uprights because it got lost in the fog.
Ooh, that's kind of embarrassing. You see, this 50th Grey Cup championship also happened to be the first Canadian Football League game to be broadcast by an All-American network when ABC's Wide World of Sports carried the game in the United States. And it would go on to be the last CFL game to air in the U.S. for the next almost 20 years. Murph, CFL superfan, last take.
Out of all the games, the Ice Bowl, the Blizzard Bowl, the Mud Bowl, I really wish I was around for that Fog Bowl. And by the way, even in the second game, the second day, the fans, only half of them came back. So there you are. So needless to say, the Fog Bowl, the strangest game in a league that has a long and rich history of bizarre unfoldings.
And it remains the only Grey Cup game ever suspended during play and the first to be finished on a Sunday. The Blue Bombers won the game by a score of 28-27. It was dubbed and is forever affectionately referred to as the Fog Bowl this day, in weather history. My thanks to my friend Chris Murphy for joining me today on the podcast. All right, switching gears, tomorrow we're going to be talking about Super Typhoon Bopha. It was the strongest tropical cyclone on record, making landfall as a Category 5. It was as devastating as the typhoon that had hit just 1 year prior. Tomorrow on This Day in Weather History, with me, your host, Chris May. And all this month sponsored by Tourism Ireland. The world's longest coastal touring route is waiting for you. It's time to press the green button. Plan your trip to Ireland today.